Elkarrekin hitzik trukatu gabe segida eman zioten ibilaldiari. Igoera agitzez eztiagoa zen mendi lepotik aurrera. Hain ezti, maldak beherase egiten baitzuen une batetik aintzina. Belarra urritu bezala nagusitu zen harria. Egi ertxiaren hasieran baratu ziren. Anderrek 250 metrokoa ez, 300 metroko erorikoa kalkulatu zuen alde batean zein bestean. Ez du merezi segitzea, aitzi berri. Arriskutsua izan liteke zorabiatu ezkero. Noiz ikusi nauzu zorabiaturik? Pasabidea, metro bat zabal ere etzen ertzaren erdian. Zangoak ez ezik, eskuak ere ezarri behar, euskarri bila, arrokaren gainean. Non eta nola, Anderren lehen metroetako kalaka. 3 urrats gabe isildu zen. Aitziber, zalu eta segurari zen harrian, inoren jarraibideen beharrik gabe. Ez du bai, larri ez. Tartea zabaltzen zen azken puskan, 2-3 metrotaraino. Oin utxei fidatzen ahal zitzaizkien berriz. Gailurrean urria zen zangoak segur tinkatzeko espazioa. Oskarbiak eta aizemeak areagotzen zuten ikuspegiaren postal kutsua. Anderrek eskuinaldeko amildegira atera zuen burua. Beherago, agitzez ere beherago, milioika artxintxarretan zatikatzen eta desegiten zen arroka huts eta bakarra. Aingeru Epaltzaren mendilloak idazlanaren pasartea izan dago.
Elurraren izara erori da, zintzilik zegoen kableetatik, eta dena estali du. Ibili ezinik gabiltza, belaunak hartuta dituen izara honetan. Lo egiteko gogoa ematen digu, bere kotoizko hotzean kiribildurik lotzeko xuxurlatzen digu, taigabe. Izarrak ikusi beharko ditugu ostera, lo lasaian murgilduko bagara. Ertzetan gora, bizkarre zurdura osoa zenbatzen, gora eta gora joan oigara. Malutak zerutik jaisten dira. Oherako pres dabilen erromesaren arima, erne dabil berriz. Eta ez dugu nahi, estalpe zuririk gure ahoa tapatzea. Asko gelditu dira, berorik ematen ez duen mendietako izaran. Itzarturik, hobeto egiten baitute amets. Juanra Madariagaren izozmendiak idazlanaren pasartea izan dau, eta Juanra eta Aingeru oraintxe izango dira hemen tranpaldoan, Miel Anjel Elustondorekin solasean. Gozatu.
Nik ez dut inoiz gutun zuririk jaso, liburu zuria.
I've never received a white letter like that, nor a white book full of pages and full of words. And this week, I've also received a letter, a white letter, that says the following. As Azcue said, the story is, and well, starts off talking about Saint Martin. Saint Martin was a warrior, and he swore against God and called for the devil. And what happened is that the devil came along. The devil came along to take Saint Martin to hell. And well, Saint Martin repented, and he, well, tried to give an excuse, saying that he was very angry, and that's why he had insulted God, but he was not speaking seriously. So the devil said that he had to repeat the mysteries of Christianity, and he said, tell me about one of them. And he said, I'm a saint, and I have to pronounce the first mystery, which is what he did. Henry David Thoreau, a philosopher and a writer, is considered to be a naturalist. He was born in 1817 in the United States. In other words, he was born 200 years ago. And due to that reason, his birth has been, his anniversary has been celebrated this year. He was at Harvard, and he did translations there. He also wrote essays and biographies. But there are two most outstanding works. Walden, that talks about living alone in nature, and there's another one on disobedience, on civil disobedience, that talks about the need to deal with a state that is not democratic. Thoreau died in the year 1862 in the same place where he was born at the age of 44. He was single, and he died from a tuberculosis. Aingeru Epaltza, on the other hand, Aingeru Epaltza and Bridelda was born in Pamplona in the year 1960, and he studied journalism, and he also worked as a journalist, and in fact he's still collaborating with different newspapers and journals. But he works as a translator for the government of Navarre since the year 1990. And for us, well, he is really a writer more than anything else. He began to work in 1980 with Uderrak, with Tigrisan, rock and roll, Mayoran London, Nafarroca reggae, and a number of other works, and Gure Jerusalem Galdua. He's also published different collections on narrations and story, like Garatatik, Erausite Kogak, Latsusua, or the book that he published last week, Mendi Joak, that this week has received an award. And then we have Juanra Madariaga Abaitua. He's from Bilbao. He was born in the year 1962. He studied Basque philology. He's worked as a professor, and he's currently working on the Nonseberi website. He's a poet, and he started to work as a poet in 1989 with Imensa Pergamuak, followed by Galeroak Rapitakuak, Eneida Usardia, Amodio Basirutan, and, well, just to mention his most recent works, Hisos Mendiak, Erorian Logica, and more recently, of only 3 years ago, Expedicioak, which is the one that we're going to be presenting here tonight. Juanra's name appears on the list of Biscayan writers, and even more importantly, his name also appears on the list of illustrious citizens of Bilbao. So, Juanra, you have the floor now. On a certain occasion, I got lost, but I can't remember which city it was nor how old I was. Perhaps I was 12 at the time. But anyway, I was jumping from one paving stone to another without lifting my head, and my parents were angry with each other. and they stood in front of a shop window, and I kept on jumping on the paving stones. And all of a sudden I felt as if I were living in a very strange world. But in any case, no alarms were triggered at that time. And the name of the pension where we were staying, well, I can't remember the name right now. No, it was called Neto. And yes, that's it. No, I've got it now. And I asked the lady, I asked the lady where the pension was, and she said, "Are you lost?" And I said, "No." Well, I waited outside. I waited outside the door. It was on the Aneto Street, and I waited for my parents to arrive, to come along. My father was always a very calm person. When he saw me, he gave me a hug. So they didn't lynch me verbally. My father didn't say anything anyway. But my mother said, "Oh, so you got lost?" And I said, "No," for the second time that day. And since then, I've never got lost again. In the explicit sense of the term, I know where I am. I don't know how I can get lost if I know where I am. But in those days, I did lose my mind for a couple of minutes. It happened to me when I had a temperature one night. And I suddenly woke up, sweating. It was dark in the room. And all of a sudden, I thought about the end of the world and what would happen to me, what my fate would be, that my parents would be lost, and in that black infinite space it was not possible to survive, that everything was related to a vacuum. And what I did was assimilate the concept of nothingness. And at that very claustrophobic moment, I asked for my mother. I said, "Come, please come to my bedroom." And she hugged me very hard. I said to her, "I don't want you to die," crying. And she said to me, "Don't worry, darling, we are never going to die." But they died, of course, when they were not that old. And that's when other losses followed too. I've dreamed about women that looked like my mother. And I was asking my mother, "Where are you?" And before that, I shouted, when I was facing that scene, I said, "Look," I shouted, "I'm here, I'm here." And I felt very claustrophobic in dark places. And this is a phobia that I've added on, cryptophobia. I can't stand narrow places. And although it might seem silly, I need to have an antidote against nothingness. In other words, I need to have space, apertures, openings. Ultimately, what I need are distances too. So this search of the pension took me back to the hills again, and I've never strayed from that path since then. So claustrophobia, cryptophobia, that you can't stand narrow places. Aingeru, what is it that you can't stand, or why did you head for the hills? Well, I headed for the hills because I was looking for oxygen. Because we all go to the hills, we all head for the hills one way or another, because we need to fill our lungs with air. And I go to the hills because I need to find my literary inspiration there. Well, I was 33 years old at the time, and I was a teacher at a school. And the priests there set up a mountain hiking group. Well, let's see, I was 13 years old, by the way. And perhaps to avoid perdition or whatever, they encouraged me to join this mountaineering group. And this was my perdition, Well, in your book, Mendigoak, there's a quote from Alexei Volotov. And the truth is that I had to look up who Alexei Volotov was because I didn't have a clue. And it seems that this was Russian, he was a Russian alpinist who was born in the year 1962, who died in the year 2003. After climbed 11 8,000-meter mountains. And he's the person that tried to rescue Iñaki Azúa de Olza. He tried to save him in the Annapurna, but it was impossible. This mountaineer, well, he died in 2013 at the Everest because one of the cords broke. One of the cords snapped, and he fell from a height of 3,000 meters. And, well, this is the quote that I'm about to read now from Volodov. I'm afraid that we don't have the translation.
Bizia gizakiak ematen dio, gora igo eta hangoa kontatzen.
Well, we would like to apologize from the booth, but we have not been given any of these texts. But why have you brought this quote, Aingeru? Well, the truth is that in this book we have the mountain, but the mountain, let's say, offers a scenario or a stage, if you want. And what I talk about are the experiences of people that climb the mountains, that show up with their backpack, of course, as you can imagine. And well, these backpacks contain many things, and whoever goes to the mountain to climb the mountains carries backpack and also carries his own life too. And I'm talking about what that backpack has inside. Well, you actually met Volotov once, didn't you? Well, yes, it was back in 2013 when I was at the base camp of the Everest, and at the Lhotse with Juan Carlos Tamayo, with Chiquion and myself, and Denis Obroko was there too, a mountaineer that's been here many a time, a very nice guy, a very strong guy too. Well, anyway, Volodov and this guy, they wanted to climb the southeast wall that had been opened by the Brits, and they wanted to do it on their own, those two. That had never been done before, and they'd achieved a very high degree of acclimatization, and they were about to climb or reach the summit rather. And I still remember how, as we were at the second or third camp getting ready, they were waiting for the weather to improve, to leave, to carry on climbing those walls, although they had no permission to climb that way. But in any case, they were pretty wild guys, and it was Alexei was behind. He slipped, and when he fell, a stone cut the rope, or cut the cord, and he fell 3,000 meters and died on the spot, of course. And I still remember how, well, it was rumored that something had happened. Well, the Sherpas were saying that Alex has died, they kept on repeating. And Tiguri, I don't know where he was, I don't know, on his own, and we were very frightened because we thought that it was Alex Chikon. But the truth is that it was very unfortunate because Alexei, I used to have tea with him. He was a very nice and very quiet person. He'd climbed, I don't know how many, 8,000-meter mountains. I think that it was 11. He was a very humble, a very quiet fella. And I remember that we went to a farm that was near the base camp to get out of that difficult environment. And Alexei showed up whilst we were there. And we had tea. And I said, well, I'll invite you, you can invite me, that sort of thing. And we were there for about half an hour, waiting to see who was going to pay for the tea. And I ended up paying for the tea. But in any case, He then bought some biscuits so we could have a nibble. So a very nice man. And well, it was a terrible shock for us. And in fact, we left 1 week later after his death. We were feeling very depressed and very unhappy. And sometimes what you do notice is that your lexicon doesn't coincide with what we use, because when we talk about mountains on the weekends, we go to the mountains, but you're talking about the parallel line of the edge of a wall on the southeast or things like that. But for us, we normal pedestrians, well, your mountaineering is completely different compared to what we do or the way we climb the mountains. It's completely unknown to us even. Well, this is a book that I've dedicated to delineation, because I'm like a draftsman. Whenever I see a picture or whenever I'm facing a mountain, what I try to do is draw lines so I can reach the summit. And if possible, it should be a line that has not been trodden by anybody else. So, for instance, well, along this path, it would be wonderful to climb the mountain. We look at the mountain differently. In other words, we analyze its geometry. And I think that is a beautiful thing. And even more so, as we pointed out with Dennis, well, there's a line, it's Aingeru, perhaps it's like mine. And sometimes, yes, we even have drawn the same lines. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful when all the mountaineers get together. And Aingeru, do you use the delineation technique, or do you just grab your backpack and head for the mountains? Just like that. So, well, I have a different approach in relation to mountain climbing. Well, let's say that I'm more of a domestic guy, if you want. And I don't really climb that much outside the Basque Country, well, perhaps sometimes to the Pyrenees, but the Pyrenees is like being at home, really. And sometimes I've gone to the Alps. Once I went to the Andes, and I once went to the Atlas in Morocco. But normally, what I do in my hobby as a mountain climber, well, it's I usually go on Saturday mornings. I leave home at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by lunchtime I'm back again. So obviously, well, you can spend the entire day if you want mountain climbing, or it could be a full week, or it could be just the weekend. But in my case, and what I mention in my stories here in my book, well, this is the kind of mountaineering that anybody living in Bilbao would do, to climb the Pagasarri, for instance, or to climb Archanda. Well, Archanda is a bit too domesticated, if you want, but in any case, let's say that you want to climb the Gorbea mountain. But yes, it's this kind of mountain climbing, if you want. But what I'm interested in much more is in the landscape itself. But I'm also interested in discovering what the person has in his mind, or what kind of connection does that person have with what is left at home, or with that landscape. And I'm interested in stories of that kind. Well, perhaps you can't really provide an in-depth description with that, but in any case, let's say that there is a bit of epic involved here, because at the end of the day, the urbanite men and women of nowadays only have an epic that they really focus on a lot, which is, well, I'm not sure if climbing the Pagasarri is very epic, or if it's a big adventure, but it's the only way we have of experiencing a minor adventure. Or you can walk up the hill in the morning. But now we can no longer go to Terra Nova. You cannot travel for 2 years searching for whales, of course. But perhaps we would be able to climb the Gorbea to spend a weekend there. But anyway, that also has its own little stories, its own little epic element. Aingeru is now reading a text that we haven't got in the booth and which we cannot translate, unfortunately.
Nabari zen egun beroa heldu zela. Apirilgo izeko eguzkiak emekiro zerabiltzan bazter atzarri berriak. Eta postaleko paisaia eraikitzen ibarra mendebaldetik zedarritzen zuen mendi bizkar gaitzean. Herriskatik kasko garaieneraino 1000 metro. Pirineotan bezainbesteko desnibela. Beherean, mendimazela, pentzez eta arizti eta gaztainadi txikiz pikardatua. Gorago, mailoa. Pago oraino ostoberritu gabeen artean, aldi handi batean azpian erroitza zuena.
Oso mendi ederrak daude munduan. Zorrotzak direnak izaten dira sigraragarrienak, baina edertasunaren kontuan denak balio du. Xiblin, Artezon Raju, Mustak Dorrea, Kantengri, Manaslu, Yerupaja, Matenjor, Erebus, Nandadebi, Txomolonzo, Amadablan, Giantxunkang, Machapuchare, Daulagiri, Alpamayo, Masenbrun. Gaur alde batean xixapagma zegoen, eta beste aldean zorrotz horietarriko asko. Atzapar zuriak bezala zeru moreari mehatxuka ia, orain leba, orain bare. Ez dut uste mendiak gaiztoak direnik, baina batzuek itxura hori islatu nahi dutela begitantzen zait.
Orduan, Aingeru etxeko aldeko mendietan, Pirineoetan, naiz eta
Aingeru goes to the mountains that are nearby, to the Pyrenees, and sometimes he goes a little further away than that. But on the other hand, Juanra heads for the 8,000-meter mountains, and you do have this hobby, but it's a different kind of hobby, isn't it, in both cases? Well, this is like other aspects of life, where you know that size is an important element. But let's say that the fundamental thing here, as occurs in these other spheres of life, the important thing has to do with feelings that are very similar, and so are the sensations that one has, and they are also fairly similar too. Well, there's a journalist who used to go out with mountaineers quite a lot, and he was a very close friend of Epaltza. And this journalist said that he admired that whenever Iñaki came back to Pamplona, when he came back from the Himalayas, his smile used to last 6 to 8 months. And if I go to Aralar, well, I know that I'm going to be smiling for at least a day. And I need to go back to the Pyrenees or Aralar or wherever so that my smile can last. Well, yes, I think that we always feel this admiration for this dimension. Everything is immensely beautiful, and I think that this is what we really admire most. But yes, I sometimes do climb smaller hills, yes, every Sunday, of course. I think that it's 637 meters, the summit. And I think that you have that feeling as if you were being elevated up into the skies, or lifted up into the skies. So you reach a situation in which what you see makes you feel very elevated. And sometimes I think, I wonder what it's like. I wonder what you feel like when you at the summit of one of these very tall mountains. I'd love to have that sensation one of these days, but I think I don't have the right age to climb an 8,000-meter mountain. But I'd love to have that feeling, to feel how grandiose that is, and enjoy what I have around me. I think that I think that that would allow you to write a novel. Well, perhaps the most important feeling is that you can feel how small you are. And sometimes we feel very proud about these things, but when you go to these places, you suddenly notice how tiny we are, that we are absolutely nothing compared to those enormous open spaces and to those gigantic mountains. And the devil says, I don't think that the mountains are bad or evil, but sometimes what they want to do is produce that feeling in you. Well, perhaps mountains are not evil, perhaps they're not bad, but how many people have died in the mountains? In your work and also in your book, Aingeru, but aren't mountains evil? I don't know. It's funny, isn't it, all this business about mountains. What life gives us, life also takes away from us. And then there's another issue, there's another element in my book. Because the mountain has risks, so does life have risks, and this is so. But death is very literary too. And death many times is much more literary than life. And I don't know why to live we need to have death alongside it. So there's an attraction between the two things. So if the mountain were free of dangers, it wouldn't be so attractive. But I think that there is something of what you're saying. And this happens with sports that are connected to a certain level of risk. I also climb mountains, and the most important thing, or the most beautiful thing that mountain climbing gives me, is how I organize my strength and how I control fear relative to risk. Because fear should never become panic, because when you feel panic, it means that you're out of control. But being afraid is a very important thing, however. And when I climb very tall mountains, well, don't think that I'm thinking, oh, this is nothing, it's a piece of cake. No, certainly not. I'm afraid. I'm very afraid. And I approach the mountain with lots of humility. And, well, thanks to your experience, you either win or you lose. But in any case, I try not to end up losing against the mountain, because for me, the biggest loss would be not going back. And that's happened to many, and to many others this has not happened. And you come back with a big smile on your face and full of life too. Well, talking about death now. In the book on this, in the introduction, a brief mention is made. Well, it's a quote that is connected by Death in Venice by Thomas Mann. And the quote says, "Death pertains more to those that remain alive than to those that are dead." So you face these risks. Many times we're talking about very big risks, and what about those that stay at home? The fear of those that stay at home. Well, I think that's the biggest enemy. I think that that is the biggest impediment for those of us that leave. It was 3 weeks ago now, and sometimes it's pretty tough, but 3 weeks ago I went skiing. And it so happened that my brother and I bumped into the widow of a mountaineer who died 4 or 5 years ago whilst skiing up in the mountains. as a consequence of a landslide, of an avalanche, and this poor guy was crushed. Well, he died together with another 2 friends, and it was a big tragedy in the Pyrenees. It was a family tragedy because a family, well, all these 3 men from this family were killed. So the 3 friends perished. And then my brother and I spoke about this and to see when were we going to do some mountain skiing, but we forgot that the woman that was standing next to us had lost her husband and 2 brothers-in-law when they were mountain skiing. That was on January the 8th. And she said, yep, I have mountain skis at home that I've not used because I was given them as a Christmas present, and 2 days later my husband died, and I haven't used those skis. I've never done cross-country skiing or mountain skiing. And we remained silent for half a minute, and she said, well, perhaps I'll use them one of these days. And, well, I thought I have to write a story about this one of these fine days. And Juanra, what about you? In your books, there are lots of deaths. For instance, the death of Vlodov, somebody that you knew directly. And those that remain behind, what sort of relationship or what kind of a connection is there? Well, sometimes what we do is apply a very superficial psychology, and upon returning from an expedition, I always convey my beautiful experiences, and I always tell people how wonderfully well I've enjoyed the whole thing and the beautiful things I've seen. And sometimes they say, look, okay, that's enough. Don't tell us anything, don't tell us any more. And in the streets of Kathmandu, I bumped into whoever it was, but anyway, and I'm pretty boring because I go on and on and on until they tell me to shut up. And I talk to them about what I've experienced and also about the risks I faced, or there was an avalanche very near where I was, or I nearly fell down, I nearly fell into a crack in the ice, but anyway, that didn't happen, fortunately. So I never lie. They know what it is I'm referring to, but they do know what it's like for me in that world and what my experience is like. And what about the devil then? 5. Well, as you know, the Gutsun Surya this year has as a subject returning to nature. And, well, what we can see is that we are outside or far away from nature, that we don't really live in a relationship with nature. And Thoreau, as we've taken him as a guide to this discussion, he opened up the pathway that is called nature writings. In other words, he implemented a current to talk about nature. What I would like to know is, in your work, Aingeru and Juanra, what is the first thing that comes? What comes first? Is it literature or is it nature? So if you want to write about, do you want to write about nature, or do you want to do literature? Do you use nature as a reference? Because Aingeru already spoke about this. Is this like your decorative element, or that's why I would like to ask you to read part of your work. So Juanra, please. We have no text once again, so we cannot translate this bit, unfortunately.
Jendeak batez ere, edo bataz beste, 1970 amets baino gehiago egiten ditu urtero. Zenbat amesteke oraino. Idatzi egingo nuke, baina haizeak atzamarrak gehiegi osten dizkit. Burua loarazi. Atzamarrak Estutzen, barkatu. Atzamarrak estutzen ditut min kartoizkoa sentitzeraino eta horrela idazten dut zatika arnaztestuka, baina gero, nire baitako indar igiarazlea ere aitzen da, dena agitzez hotzago bilarakariz. Behar dudan baso ditalazioa, desdoituz.
Aspaldidanik izan dut, mendirako zaletasuna. Nik uste dut literaturak eskatzen didan aleginaren kontrapuntua dela mendia niretzat. Lagungarria ere bada. Liburu honitz mamitu izan ditut mendian gora ari naizela. Sarritan, mendira adiskideekin joan da ere, une batean bakarrik zoazela iduri du. Orduan zure baitara biltzen hasten zara. Buruan dudana liburu bat bada, garuna horren inguruan aritzen zait jirabueltaka. Zangoak bide berriak urratzen ari diren bitartean, garunak ere bide berriak urratzen ditu.
Idaztea ere mendia bezain obsesibo duzue?
So, is writing as obsessive as mountain climbing? Well, not for me. I'm obsessive about mountains more than with writing. As Aingeru Arambarri taught me an adjective. Well, I'm afraid that you can't translate this into Spanish, but it's something like I write whenever I can. Whereas mountains have to be something that needs plenty of time from me, or the weekend or whatever, but it's always a natural space with your bicycle or walking or whatever. But what you said, that well, sometimes you you feel that you need to write, but you can't. But sometimes I take a notebook with me as if it were a sort of diary, and it's only when I'm coming back or returning from the summit, or when I reach the base camp, when I try to write. Well, the truth is that you can't carry a pen on you because it will freeze on you. So what you do is you carry a pencil, but sometimes because of the damp or because of the snow or whatever, the whole thing is terrible. You can't write. It all gets soggy. And if you have written something, you can't even understand what you've written. So you write when you get back, really. That's when you do your writing. And based on my notes in the base camp, I write at home when I return. Well, Aingeru, well, you say that you take notes and then you write at home, but these people, but does somebody read this? Yes, of course, there are people that read this. So, do people of my circle read? Well, of course, I know mountaineers that read. Some of them read quite a lot, others less. And I'm not sure if they're very different compared to your average citizen and how much people read. But I, for instance, I love to go up into the shelters in the Pyrenees in the summer. And well, these are usually people from France, and they read there outside, outdoors, sunbathing at 6 o'clock in the evening. They've just arrived, they've changed clothes, and what they do, they get a book out of their backpack. Sometimes it's e-readers that are lighter. And those are things that I enjoy watching. And well, it's like when you see people reading on the underground or on the bus here in Bilbao. Of course there are people that read. Yes, readers do exist, in fact. And what about the Everest? Do you see people reading up on the Everest? Well, it has happened to me many a time because I've taken 2 or 3 books. Heads usually takes poetry, some stories in Basque, but I usually carry 2 or 3 books. I need heavy books for the base camp, and sometimes people ask me, "Well, what have you got?" I said, "Do you mind swapping later on?" And you sometimes come across some big surprises in books. Well, this week I've read through one of the interviews with Sarayunandia, and at the end of one of these interviews, he says that the battle has been lost. Well, it's another battle that has been lost, were his words. But he does give some advice, though, and he says, look, go to bed with a good book, and if not, go to bed with somebody that has read a good book, which is a not bad piece of advice, by the way. We are going to avoid number 6. We have number 7 now, and this is, we now have Aingeru reading his text. And I would like to ask Juanra to read, well, some of the poems from his book, because he's a poet after all, isn't he? In this, well, he's published a number of poems in this book. to issues that talk about words starting with a D. I'm afraid that we don't have the literary translation here, so we can't do the translation. I'm afraid we can't provide the interpreting. And the devil said, say 8. Going back to nature, is that a literary utopia? Returning to nature is something, but getting close or approximating nature is a completely different thing. But when you come and go, what is it that you carry inside yourselves in this trip to the mountain, or from the mountain to the world? To when you come back from the mountain, when you return to the world, what do you bring back with you? We bring back gasoline and, and a positive spirit to carry on until the next time you can go to the mountain. But there's a little lie there, because a mountaineer comes back to take a nice hot shower, to have a nice hot dinner if possible, and then sleep in a comfortable, soft bed, which is something that we all like, of course. And then the following day, you get up at 6 o'clock or 6:30 in the morning, and you have to go back to work, of course. But sometimes, and even though you are very unhappy about going to work, you end up enjoying it too, I suppose, because going to the mountain here is a very urban kind of activity. But why does the mountain attract us so much, or why do we enjoy traveling from the city to the mountain when we will go to a nearby hill, nearby, that is near the city? And many people climb the hills because it's a completely different place. It's a different element that allows us to break away from our daily routine. But I don't know. Are we going to spend all our lives up in the mountains? Well, these people of us, these guys like us that enjoy walking up into the hills, would we want to stay there without being able to come back to take a nice hot shower and go to a nice fluffy soft bed? I'm not that sure about that. Well, we've been talking a lot about Thoreau, who lived for 26 months. He lived very close to a lake, Lake Golden, I think he said. And in the introduction on civil disobedience by Marcos Tapien, He said that we have idealized and we've exaggerated the loneliness of Thoreau, because since July the 4th of 1848, from that day onwards, he was there for only 26 months, and every 2 days he used to walk down to the village to meet up with philosophers, or to, well, get the food that his mother cooked for him. And that's when he bumped into people. He bumped into people up in the hills on the mountain, but he only had 3 chairs. He never enjoyed being surrounded by too many people. He didn't mind visitors, but he preferred not to have them, really. And I have to ask Juanra now. When you are coming back from those tall mountains, what is it you bring along with you? Because before you were using a word. Well, what is it that you bring back from the mountain? Well, if we go to the mountain searching for utopia, perhaps what we come back to dystopia, to put it in a straightforward manner. So your day-to-day routine ends up gobbling you up. And the devil said 9, but we're going to skip this one too, because the judge has said so, and also number 10. And let's move on to number 11 then. And the devil said 11. And here, Juanra is going to talk with Aingeru and the other way around. What we call de-paradise. De-paradise. Well, no, I'm sorry, there's no such thing as a de-paradise. It's the summit. That's the end of the road. It's your turn now. And anyway, I had a question for you. And what is a mountain? Is it more of a path or more of a summit? For me, it's always a path, really, as in the case of Ulysses. An old backpack, well, that's something that I like, yes. What a beautiful narration we are dealing with here, with that of the wolf that becomes tame, or the dog that becomes wild. Which do you prefer? Well, I think I prefer the story about the dog that becomes wild. The dog that becomes an animal that escapes in search of freedom. I think that is a much more beautiful take. And emptiness or vacuum, well, it's emptiness up on the summit where there's absolutely nothing and there's nobody either. So what is a mountain for you? Is it more of poesy or more of a novel? Obviously it has to be poetry. And what about the mountain? Which mountain are you thinking of? Mountain, the Midi, for instance. And the devil said 12. Okay, Juanra now.
Goizeko lauterdietan, 3. kanpamentutik 7.300 metrotik atera ginen, gailurrerantz 7 ordu gutxi gora bera. Baina gu, gaueko 12etan, 2. kanpamentutik atera ginen, beste 300 metro, 1000 metro guztira. Aldapa luzean, ekagarria, Iñaki Otxoa Diolzaren bidetik joan ginen, gailurrean jende asko, baina lagunak ia guztiak. Tartean Edurne Pasaban, bere 14. sortzimeilekoa ospatzen ari zen, eta gu berarekin. Bueno, Xixapama ezen oso gogorra izan niretzat, mendiarina, gakoa topatu ezkero, baina hotza bai, oso hotza izan zen. Gero beste gau bat, gailurretik behera atera ginen tokian, eta gauean estul bortitza, goragalea ematen dizun hoietakoa, estula eta goragalea. behera egin behar da derrigor eta harin eta jaitzieran problemak izan genituen. Baina, bueno, esa apartekoak. Oso luzea suertatzen zitzaidan jaitziera hori, eta arrazoi askorengatik kamandurainoko buelta oso gogorra izan zen. Xixapagma 14etan txikiena da, handienetan txikiena, baina txikienetan handiena. Nik ez dakit alpinista askok gailurretara liburuak eraman ote dituzten, baina nik Xixapagmako tontorreraino Eseperako tranbia izeneko liburua eraman nuen. Eta han, Baraila eta Espainiak erabat izoztuta, liburua zabaldu nuen eta bere azken kapitulua irakurri nuen.
Uste du 1914an jaio nintzela.
Lukasen ariketa. Uste du 1914an jaio nintzela. Txikitan, eskolan egon nintzen eta gaztetan gerran. Baina gerra ezen egoteko leku ona, jendea bat-batean hiltzen zelako. Horregatik itzuli nintzen, arostegian hasteko. Arostegian zozegu handiago zegoen eta ez zen bertan inor hiltzen. Ez badala beso morro urdin batzuk.
Ez zen bertan inor hiltzen. Ez badala beso morro urdin batzuk. Gero Rosarekin eskondu nintzen. Rosaren espezialitatea zen tranbietara igotzea eta sopa osaina zuen. Gero hil egin zen. Ordutik arrebarekin bizi naiz eta etxera sartu zitzaigun izaki batekin, Markosekin. Anai ere hil egin zen. Ni laster hilko naiz, baina abisoa emango dut. Markosi esango dira, bihar hilko naiz, Markos. Nate gehiagi zehazte gabe ere. Eskolan oso gustora ibili nintzen. Ortografia asko ikasi genuen eskolan. Txokolatea pulpan hartuko nuke niko nahi. Ortografia katzez beteta dago bizitza, Lukas.
Gero, liburua itxi nuen, burua makurtu, eta negar egin nuen berriz. Ez dakit ulertuko den, baina sakon egin nuen negar. Arrezkero, ez du liburua inun topatzen.
Eta deabruak errakamairu.
And the devil said 13, and St. Martin said there's no such thing as a 13. And the cock sings in the world, and the angels in the sky, in the heavens, and we leave our soul in the hands of Jesus Christ. Well, that's all from us. But if you have any questions or any comments on your mountain climbing or on reading, it's your turn. It's been a grand finale. Madariaga was really impressed by these images. I'm not sure if you have any curiosity or something you would like to point out. Well, I have a curiosity. I have two questions, perhaps. As everybody is quiet, I have two questions for you, yes. Well, I have many questions, really. In these kind of literature that focus on the Himalaya, who would be, in a thriller, who would be the killer in the base camp, for instance? Who would be the assassin, the murderer? Well, I'm sure that it's the head of the expedition. He would be the murderer for sure. And the Poles have gone to the K2, and there's been quite a lot of tension with Denis and with Miniski too. And he told him to go away, and they nearly ended up having a fight. So all the Poles were against Denis, but in any case, well, perhaps you could even make a film of that. I don't know, perhaps Demis could appear in one of those cracks in the ice, dead and gone, for instance. And then Sarionendia says the mountain is our free territory. It's our only free territory. Well, I quite agree with that statement, because, well, the biggest feeling of freedom that I've ever had in my life, well, the most perfect feeling of freedom that I've ever had in my life was at the Choyu, at my first 8,000-meter mountain, together with Juanito Oyarzabal, and together with an Australian friend who unfortunately died, and with a Catalonian friend called Jaume Gibernau, who comes with me quite a lot. I was very strong, and I wanted to reach the summit on my own. I was for an hour and a bit on my own on the summit at about minus 25 degrees Celsius, but it was sunny and it was just about bearable. And when I got there, when I reached the summit, I felt I had a feeling. I felt at peace. I felt that I was totally free. It was a mixture of peace and freedom that I've never felt anywhere, nor at any other point in time in my life. And I've always waited to see if I could have that feeling all over again. And I've cried a lot. And when I reached the summit, I don't know why, but in any case, it's a feeling of peace and freedom you have. And very seldom can you have that kind of feeling. The book written by Juanra, Expedición, or The Expedition, and the Xisapagma, or also called the SP. Well, there's a connection with the book by Aingeru Elorriaga too, because it's the same mountain, SP. But why did you take this book with you? Why did you take Aingeru Elorriaga's book to the SP? Why did you read it when you reached the summit? Well, it was madness, really. It was a big madness on my part, really. It was a stupid act, perhaps, but in any case, I was delighted with it, because it's a book that I love. I really do enjoy this book. And I think that it's the first book in Basque that gave information on these 8,000-meter mountains. And I said as much to Unai. I said, I'm going to do this. And he said, well, don't risk your life just because you want to read my book. Don't even dare. Well, yes, it was a bit of madness on my part. And for me, Xisapagma has been a very special book. And, well, this is another very special book, as you've already seen in the footage before. And in any case, you do have to perform foolish acts in life. I think that we have that obligation. There's a question over there, I think, from somebody in the audience, if I'm not mistaken. Well, yes, this is a very brief comment. We all meeting up here because we are all mountaineering people, but what you do, I don't do, and that is writing. And you write about whatever you want to write. But in the meantime, what you can do, you can take as a subject matter mountains. And it's wonderful to read your books, by the way. Thank you very much. Well, this is all from us. Thank you all very much indeed. And good night, everybody.
Oso ongi.